After weeks of political back and forth in the US Congress, the floodgates opened to release $1.9 trillion in COVID relief funding through the American Rescue Plan. The battered aviation sector is now in line to receive government support to get it back on its feet, with around $26 billion in aid targeted for airlines, airports, aircraft manufacturers, as well as the support and service sectors, including companies like maintenance organizations. Well, watching all this closely for AIN is, of course, my colleague Kerry Lynch, and she joins us from just outside Washington, D.C. Kerry, let's not get bogged down in what it took to get this legislation passed, because life is a bit too short for that. Let's cut to the chase and try and make sense of how meaningful this could be for the aviation sector. So first of all, how is President Joe Biden's stimulus plan going to help me if I'm running an aviation company or if I work for one?
Well, Charlie, in this $1.9 trillion package, there is $26 billion directed specifically at the aviation industry. And then there's a myriad of other provisions that are also available that different aspects of the aviation industry could tap into. There's different kinds of, there's a small continuation of the payroll protection plan and some other loans. There's recovery disaster assistance. There's vaccine aid to help with the vaccine distribution, as we know the aviation industry is very involved with. So there are several different roads that you can take through this bill that could help the business.
Right. And it kind of depends what type of company you are. And I understand that one of the new aspects of this, for example, is that now aircraft manufacturers can get some help to sustain their payrolls. Is that right?
That's exactly right, Charlie. There are several different pots of money, if you will, that help various aspects of the industry. And one of which is a brand new program that wasn't in the previous two relief bills. That is a innovative cost sharing program. It sets aside $3 billion for aerospace manufacturers and actually maintenance providers as well. And under this program, the manufacturers will pay half the compensation for employees who are at risk, those who would either be furloughed or who are being recalled from being furloughed, and the government would pay the other half. And that's just one of the different aspects of pots of money for the American Rescue Plan. There's also money in there, again, to continue the payroll support program. That was in the previous two bills. And there's also more airports money.
Right. So in terms of how you get your hands on it, it depends which type of company you are. And in some cases, it might be a continuation of some aid that you've already had. In other cases, it might be new money.
That's exactly right. So with the payroll support program, that was the big pot of money that has been in place. Well, it had been in place in March, and then, of course, it expired until it was renewed again in December. And there's $14 billion set aside for those operators, and there's another billion for contractors. But also there's another $8 billion in airport grant money. So if you're an airport, whether general aviation to a large airport, there's going to be more money for you. Of course, the bulk of that goes to major airports, with $100 million for the smaller airports.
Good. Okay. So we're talking about a big figure of $26 billion, but from the way you're describing it, it's actually different pots of money with slightly different purposes. So from right now, how can companies start getting access to this money? How do they set about doing that? Is that clear enough, do you think?
Well, in some cases it is. In some cases it's been a little problematic. With the payroll support program, which is the bulk of the money, it's been the bulk of the aid dating back a year from late last March when the payroll support program was first adopted. The focus has really been getting as much aid to the airlines as possible, as soon as possible, so they can keep their pilots, their flight attendants on staff, particularly the pilots. But there has been some issues of late with the payroll support program for the smaller operators. As a matter of fact, just today, the National Air Transportation Association wrote Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen asking for help with the payroll support program, because They've already passed the third tranche, but they're finding that the operators are still not getting help from the second tranche. And when they reach out to the Treasury Department, they're not finding much luck even getting a hold of the people they need to work through these issues. And by January 14th, which is when the applications for the second tranche were due, most of the agreements had already been worked out with the major airlines to get that money out as fast as possible. But it's just been much more difficult for the smaller carriers and the Part 135 operators. And the concern is now we've got another tranche of money coming that they'll get kind of lost in the wayside as the focus goes now to getting the larger air carriers the third tranche. So it's been a little bumpy of late. I'm sure it'll work out, but the letter NATA mentioned that there are smaller operators who are keeping pilots and their personnel on staff on the idea that they have to do that to get this money, but the money isn't coming, so they're incurring some losses. So it's been a little bit of a concern on that front.
And so much of what you're describing seems to be, the goal seems to be preserving jobs, basically. Can we keep people on the payroll, just while the industry recovers? Is it fair to say that that's one of the key priorities, to keep people employed in aviation?
Yes, and that's certainly the payroll support program as well as the manufacturer cost share program that I referred to earlier are completely payroll programs. So the idea is let's preserve jobs to the extent we can. You're absolutely right, Charlie. And there are guarantees and commitments that these companies have to make if they are going to take this money. And the money, by the way, are grants. They're not loans. So you do not have to pay them back if you honor the commitments of what you're going to do, which is keep people on salary.
Right. Okay. So with a bit of determination and sticking at it, these companies will get the help, and that should tide them over. But let's talk the bigger picture here. I mean, we are all working on the assumption that aviation will be able to recover as the efforts to control COVID really get a grip. But we've got a new transportation secretary in the United States, Pete Buttigieg, and as I understand it, he's looking to take quite a different approach, perhaps in some policy areas. What do we think's on his mind when it comes to aviation?
Well, I think right now his whole focus is infrastructure. That's something that the past Congress and the past administration was not able to get accomplished, although there was discussion of it for years. And now there's a wide recognition that infrastructure projects are really good for the economy. It brings jobs and it boosts local economies all throughout the country. So they want to put a lot of emphasis on getting a big infrastructure package passed. And their aviation absolutely will be a piece of it. So this stands to help more for airports and different parts to keep the airspace infrastructure operating. So there will be benefits for it, and it could even help smaller airports and remote regions. It just depends on how it all shakes out. But during his confirmation hearing, that was something that the secretary emphasized, that would be a key piece. And then, of course, the other sector of it is the environment, and that's another policy area that he will be focusing on as well.
Sure. But the good news, anyway, at least in the short term, is that there is more money available through this American Rescue Plan. And if companies go about things the right way, they can get help to retain jobs. And I guess that's good news, because the expectation is that as more and more people are vaccinated, more and more people are traveling again, booking flights, the aviation industry could get back into recovery mode. So thanks so much for watching that for us, Kerry. And please, let's get back in touch when there's further developments from Washington.
Okay, Charlie, will do.
Thanks for watching this AIN video. Please like, subscribe, and share it if you've enjoyed it. Also, visit AINonline.com for all the latest on the aviation industry.